case is from a brand called iTech. Since it's not a famous brand, their cases are very cheap. Although it doesn't cost much, the quality doesn't affect the computer's performance. It is a mid-tower case, so it's spacious enough to contain the motherboard and all the other components.
My computer isn't pre-assembled. I've bought the single pieces, and then assembled them myself to save money. My goal was to spend the least possible amount and still get a powerful PC. I assembled the computer in 2015, with a total cost of 750 euros.
This motherboard is made by Gigabyte, a well-known brand who creates brand new motherboards and GPUs every year. This motherboard supports an ultra-durable technology, which permits to the component to last longer in years. This supports Wi-Fi BIOS, a new technology which enables the user to install many operating systems in the computer storage. The motherboard has been chosen based on the CPU, which uses the Haswell technology. It's really important to choose a motherboard which is compatible with the CPU or the PC won't work.
The processor, an Intel Pentium G3258, isn't very powerful, but it does its job. Games released before 2017 run at high or ultra settings at 60 frames per second, which is the standard frame rate with modern monitors. Newer games struggle a bit, but lowering some settings improves the performance drastically. This processor is overclockable, which means you can raise the frequency of the standard CPU to improve performance.
My video card is the NVIDIA GTX 970. It belongs to the GTX 900 series, which is based on the Maxwell technology. Maxwell technology brings a new way of processing video information, which improves a lot game performance. It is a high-end product, used in gaming or video editing. In 2014, it was the second most powerful graphic card ever made. There is more than one company that produces the 970. For example, mine was made by Asus Strix. My computer suffers from a problem called bottleneck. The graphics card is very powerful, but the processor isn't, and that limits the computer's overall performance.
It is a 2TB hard disk by Seagate. I use it mainly to store heavy files like films, video games, photos, and music. Being mechanical, it is lower than an SSD, but it's cheaper and has a bigger storage memory.
The fan is from a brand called Cooler Master. It's a well-known, reliable brand, and together with the heatsink, it grants an efficient cooling system for both the CPU and the video card. Cooling down your computer is a key element, especially during video game sessions.
It is 128 GB solid-state drive, and I store in it the operating system and programming compilers and interpreters, because I need them to be fast and well-performing. An SSD isn't mechanical. Being electrical, it's very fast, but it costs about 4 times more than a hard disk with the same storage capacity.
My RAM memory is made of 2 sticks of 4 GB each. The model is Ripjaws from G-Skill. Both sticks have a refresh rate of 2400 MHz. Having enough RAM memory is vital for running all kinds of programs. The newest video games require at least 4 GB of RAM, but in the future that requirement may go up to 8 GB. If I'd ever need more, I could always buy another 8 GB stick, but since I don't do any kind of video editing, I don't think that's going to happen soon.
Zalman M4 40-1R is not the best mouse, but it's really good for what you pay, which is about 30 euros. It has 2 additional macro keys, which turn out useful when it comes to gaming. You can also change its sensitivity with a special key. Ferrix 1100 comes with 3 different backlights, a blue one, a red one, and a pink one. It has polling rate of 1000 Hz, which is how frequently your computer checks for signal from the keyboard. 1000 Hz means it looks for new inputs every millisecond. It uses the USB 2.0 to connect to the computer instead of the PS2 connector, which is much slower.
Arrivederci, Blazkowicz. Assicurati che funzioni. Oh no.
This game is Wolfenstein. It was released in 2014 by Machine Games. Its events take part in a world where Germany won the Second World War, and you impersonate a member of the rebellion, trying to put an end to Nazis' rule. This game is running at high settings with a resolution of 1080p, in full windowed mode. As you can see, the frame rate stays stable at 60 frames per second. But it never gets higher. It's because the game is locked at 60 FPS. This has both advantages and disadvantages. Limiting FPS seems like something useless, but preventing fluctuations in the frame rate gives a more realistic experience. The PC is loading everything in time. There isn't a pop-up effect, and the frame rate is stable, even while recording. That's because the computer is very powerful for 2014 standards.
Right now, we are watching a Bioshock Infinite benchmark, which helps us test the computer's performance. The game was released in 2013 by Rational Games. It's running at ultra settings and has a resolution of 1080p. The frame rate stays high. The software calculated that the average frame rate is 110 with peaks at 400. As you can see, Bioshock had amazing graphics for the time it was released in. The game aged well, so it's still up to the standards of nowadays gamers.
This is Skyrim. It was released in 2011 by Bethesda Game Studios. It's a medieval fantasy video game in a world with magic, dragons, elves, dwarves, and other fantasy stuff. It's the oldest game we'll show on this video, but surprisingly enough, it's also the worst performing. It always stays between 30 and 70 FPS, with an average of 50 FPS. That's because this game was not optimized for the new video cards by the developers. While not recording, the average frame rate goes up to 70 FPS, but it's still very weird for a game released 8 years ago. The game's plot and gameplay completely make up for the technical underachievements. The coolest thing of this game are mods, packages of files which enable the user to modify game specifics by adding new features or modifying them. For example, you can modify graphics, making them better. We haven't shown this mod in the video because, as I said before, the game is not optimized and it will go slower while recording.
Was always smart mouth and quick with it, but something was always missing.
Fatti poi la foto.
Dai, colpiscila.
Ma ti allontana.
yeah.
Tell these faggots to stop nagging, cause them Wolfgang niggas threw 'em off the bandwagon like